Hey there, welcome to First Glance with Jody Vance. This is your opportunity to get in on the ground floor on some investments that you might miss the boat on if, we were going old school and giving this information only to people with very expensive suits and perhaps pocket squares and massive portfolios. Oh, no, we're giving this information to everybody, trying to make this as inclusive as possible, getting in on businesses that are on the precipice of hitting large. And we are very excited to have Peter Dickey, the CEO of Huntsman Exploration, with us. Hello, Peter. Nice to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me.
I want to learn all about Huntsman Exploration. I'm fascinated by just the sort of Coles notes that I have on it. Can you give us the elevator talk of who you are?
Okay, the elevator pitch. We're a development company looking at assets that we feel will have tremendous growth in the future. And when I say that, we're looking at the overall economy now, and everybody knows that the world economy has been thrown into a blender, really, with the pandemic. So we look for opportunities where we think that there will be growth in the future and the reasons behind that growth. The first and foremost is we believe strongly that the green economy is something that's going to receive a lot of focus. Governments worldwide are spending enormous amounts of money to try and keep their economies afloat and to try and rebuild their economies as we come out of the pandemic. And one of the facets that they're putting a lot of dollars into is the green economy. Now, where that falls into play for us is that we believe strongly in the electric vehicle market, the electrification of transportation, and what that requires is batteries. So we've had a focus for a long time now on battery metals, and in particular, we've gone after nickel, which we believe is going to be one of the highest in-demand batteries, and certainly the pundits that are a lot smarter than me seem to be predicting the same thing.
And this, in this window of opportunity right here, where we've just seen Elon Musk become the wealthiest man on the planet, clearly that the man behind Tesla and the electric vehicle, he's that wealthy for a reason. So the resource in order to make those vehicles as successful comes back to what you're doing in the mining sector.
Absolutely. It's you can't power a battery powered vehicle without the battery. So the battery's development now, I'll step back 1 second here. One of the drawbacks to the mass use of electric vehicles and the mass adoption of electric vehicles has been trying to get the cost down to an equivalent of a gas-powered vehicle, so that your operating costs, your maintenance costs, etc., have been, the electric vehicles have been expensive. So yes, you referred to people with, fancy bow ties and expensive suits, and those were predominantly the people buying electric cars in the past. What has happened over the last 12 to 24 months is a massive growth in the development of these batteries to power vehicles. And as a matter of fact, it was 6 months ago that they started talking about million-mile batteries, which are batteries that you can fully charge, fully draw down enough to power a vehicle for 1 million miles, which is a tremendous growth, which does two things. One, it allows you to drive further on the same set of batteries, as opposed to having to replace them after a certain period of time. And it will also give you the range that will get you into a comparable status with a gas-powered vehicle. So now we're seeing that cost benefit starting to even out. And as a result, you're seeing more and more and more electric vehicles, and there's more manufacturers coming up with electric vehicles. And some of the major North American manufacturers are talking about significant percentages of their production is going to be electric now. Not just peripheral, but significant percentage. And they all require batteries.
They all require batteries, which is where Huntsman Exploration comes into play, because you are in the business of mining for both nickel and gold, which is interesting to me, not focusing on one or the other. Can you speak to the diversification there?
I'll speak to the gold there, because the flip side of government spending enormous amounts of money to keep their economies afloat and to get them restarted again once the pandemic eases is that eventually that money's got to get paid back.
Yeah.
We all know what happens when governments run massive deficits. Eventually it catches up, and in the form of, generally speaking, higher taxes and or inflation. So as we can try and prepare ourselves a little bit for the taxes, the inflation is a little bit of an unknown, and eventually it will kick in. And of course, one of the safest safeguards against inflation is to own gold. So gold has been in a tremendous run over the last 12 months in anticipation of this. It's had a bit of a sort of a cooling off period in the last few months, but we certainly feel long term that gold is going to be affected tremendously by inflation, and the price will, of course, rise correspondingly. And then, so we wanted to make sure that we covered from a corporate investment point of view, we wanted to make sure that we covered both the growth in the new economy through the battery metals and also the hedge against inflation through gold. So we really have two companies in essence. We have Huntsman Nickel and we have Huntsman Gold. And so both companies will be hopefully reap the benefits of the regrowth in the economy, and we'll have the hedge against inflation.
And you can find them, their stock symbol, your stock symbol is HMAN, Huntsman Exploration. HM as in Mary, AN as in Nancy. HMAN is the stock symbol. Let's dig deep, pardon the pun. Okay, I meant it. Let's dig deep on the mining asset in Australia that is rich in nickel, and also the two other properties in the US, both in Nevada and Idaho, and some of the struggles around all of those with regard to trying to get things done in a time of COVID-19.
Well, I'll tell you about struggles. It was just under a year ago, before the pandemic hit. I actually flew down to Perth to meet with the consulting geologists who we have used in the past for the exploration in Western Australia. And incidentally, Western Australia is always ranked in the top 5. I think it's currently number 1 or 2 of jurisdictions in the world to operate from a mining perspective. And we met with the company there. It's an outfit called New Exco, who have been responsible for half a dozen very significant nickel discoveries over the last decade or so. They're quite renowned operators. And they strongly encouraged me to focus in and develop this Cane Grass asset, which is a couple of years ago, there was a bit of drilling done on it, and it produced some very significant nickel, copper, and cobalt results. And so we put together a plan to sort of tidy up the markets, raise some capital, and get the plan in motion. And I can tell you at that point in time, and this was February of 2020, we were looking at a 10-day permitting window, a 2 weeks to get a drill rig on the property. Well, since then, a lot of money has gone into mining, and Western Australia in particular has done very well with the pandemic. So their slowdown period was not nearly what it's been in a lot of the rest of the world. So mining took off there, and we've spent the better part of 5 months now, and we're finally concluded with obtaining permits, hiring drill rigs, that sort of thing. But this is something that, because of the demand, it's a double-edged sword. You know, everybody wants the commodities, everybody wants to try and find the next mine, and so everybody's hiring the drillers, and everybody's, you know, putting everybody to work. So it was a little bit of a struggle to get things moving, but now we have that sorted out, and you know, we just announced recently that we've completed all the necessary work and obtained all the necessary permits, and we've hired a driller. So action will start soon.
And therein lies the reason why you're on First Glance with Jody Vance, because that tells any investor now is the time.
Yes.
All the ducks have lined up in a row, and that's the nickel piece, right? So that's the battery green energy for yes. Somebody who's thinking my investments are moving forward, are going to be rooted in the green economy. There's your opportunity, because not a lot of people would think mining and green economy, and yet it is vital, as you have explained here. Let's talk about the gold mine properties as well in the United States. Certainly the situation in the US very different than that of Australia when it comes to impacts of COVID-19.
Yes, it has been. It's been a little bit of a struggle, getting operations going there. But we obtained two assets, which one in Nevada, which has a lot of historical work on it, which has got both a widely disseminated lower grade type host, and it's also got a higher grade, more vein type structure on the property. So there's some very significant assay numbers. I won't bore you with the specifics of them. They're certainly available on our website, which is huntsmanx.com.
Oh, good to know.
And there's full material on there. And we were also presented with an opportunity in Idaho, which is very close to the deposits. And I say deposits because they have 3 deposits on their property.
Wow.
Integra Minerals, Integra Resources, sorry. Which is a very highly historic region as far as silver and gold production is concerned. That property has got the right underlying geology, we believe, to potentially host similar type deposits as our neighbors do. It's a little earlier in the game there as far as development is concerned, but we certainly feel from a long-term perspective that's a great area to be in. The real estate addresses are in ideal locations for both Nevada and Idaho.
And I think that's a piece of this puzzle that I think is very important when it comes to Huntsman Exploration, is how very much on the radar your company was in February of 2020, derailed only by the noisy news cycle. Yes. And so here you are, even more primed, prepared, and ready to make those next steps, and perhaps ready to garner the attention that you were on the precipice of just 11 months ago.
Yeah, it was. I mean, historically, the company has, with previous management, they took a bit of an attitude of trying to be a little bit of everything for everybody. When I was asked to come in and run the company, I took a look at all the projects involved. In particular, the nickel asset in Australia intrigued me. That's why I made the trip down there. And so we spent some time narrowing down the focus of the company, making sure that it's impossible to be everything to everybody. So we picked an asset direction, which we felt at the beginning was very, very strong, and we still do believe that is the primary focus, and it is the primary focus of the company moving forward, and that's the battery metal space, in particular nickel. And then as the year developed, we saw the impact of rising gold prices, and we realized that, while we can't be everything to everybody, we also can't pass up an opportunity. So when the golden goose waddled by, pardon the pun,
I like puns.
We realized that we better be involved in the gold business as well. And so it's not the primary focus of the company. Nickel is, but we also will simultaneously be able to develop an asset which we feel in the long term will also reap great benefits for shareholders.
So you kind of answered my curveball question that we had in play, if the fact that nickel and gold, having both, might deter investors, but you just explained it quite succinctly. Looking forward in the green economy with the nickel-based battery mission and that green eye, but also one eye on what has been the go-to in uncertain times, which is investing in gold.
Absolutely. It's people that I've been in and around this business since the late 80s, mid 80s actually. So I think I was only a teenager at the time, but
small child.
But so I've seen a lot of cycles come and go. Gold is one that perennially goes through cycles. There's a lot of pundits that, as I have mentioned earlier, are a lot smarter than me, that certainly believe we're on the cusp of a super cycle for gold. And it's, with respect to shareholders, and I'm a significant one, I don't think it's an opportunity that we could have passed by. It's not jumping on the flavor of the day, as some companies are wont to do. but it's a long-term strategic goal for the company to have a solid gold asset base, because let's face it, the billions and hundreds of billions of dollars that governments are spending that they don't have right now will have to be paid back at some point in time, and that almost always results in inflation. So it's a cycle that we can't avoid right now, and not that they can avoid spending some of that money, but we have to face that.
We have to make the plans accordingly.
We have to plan accordingly. Yes.
Yeah. HuntsmanX.com. Want to make sure people know how to find you. HuntsmanX.com. Again, we're with Peter Dickey, the CEO. When it comes to you personally, you mentioned you've been around a while in the industry. Do you remember your first investment? Do you remember pulling the trigger on your first, and what gave you the push? Do you remember that?
Oh, you know what? I was sitting in a fellow's office, who a broker at the time, in the mid 80s, and a fellow walked in and he had a gold Krugerrand watch. And so I looked at this thing and I thought, holy smokes, and the watch was a piece of beauty, but I wasn't a huge watch fan at the time. I was more interested in the Krugerrand. So I looked at it, and next thing you know, we start talking about gold deals, and I got invested in a few little gold deals at that time, and this was back in the almost early 1980s, so quite some time ago. And it was that was the stepping stone that got me hooked. Nice. So gold fever.
The 80s were super cool. I'm like totally on side with you, Peter. Like the best music's from the 80s. Like, let's just be honest right here. If we were sitting in a pub right now, that's what would be playing.
I did have a mullet.
Yeah, you did
have a mullet.
Yeah. I had really big bangs. I had like bangs and shoulder pads. It was not, I was Molly Ringwald's body double. I thank you for your time today. Huntsman Exploration, again, HMAN. Please come back, and we don't just do one glance with people here on First Glance with Jody Vance. We'd love to have you back and update us as things roll along.
Well, that's great to hear. We will have it's been a tumultuous year, both economically in the world and corporately, as we clean things up, raise some capital, got ourselves in a position with the right assets. And this year is going to be very exciting, because now we can put all our plans into effect. And so we'll be in the news quite a bit.
Cool. And if people want to invest in you or speak to someone regarding investment, they should just go to your website?
Go to the website. There's an ability to sign up to make sure that you get updated news all the time. And there's information about contacting the company and myself as well.
Excellent. Again, huntsmanx.com. Always a pleasure to speak with Peter Dickey. Thanks for doing this.
Thank you very much.